Today we are back at Nicholls Park, and here we go. So from the start, right away, it's a pretty tight hole shot this time. You can see CR just pulls it out right there at the last second for that hole shot, and then Evan, who was not at the race last weekend, but is here today and is always strong, both get a great start, and they lead through the first few corners here. I did notice that Evan put slightly skinnier tires on his bike. Even though it is a mountain bike, he put some skinnier tires on it. Before, he had some pretty thick, probably 2.2-inch tires, and it definitely slowed him down a little bit on the grass, but today he's got the skinny tires on, and it doesn't seem to be holding him back at all. This corner right here was a little tricky in the beginning. I think I got a hang of it by the end, but just that first... Oh man, I just lost it in this first part of the race here, where now Steven also sneaks by me and is on his way to hunt down CR and Evan, who both have a good gap now. You can see them almost pulling away in the front there. Right before we make this left-hander and go up this hill onto this little bit of a loose gravel section. And around this corner here into what we call the toilet bowl. Just because of the way that the ground is kind of sunken down. So in Utah, we have a lot of these drainage ditches in parks like this, and that's what this is here. But it makes for a great cyclocross obstacle as we come up to it. The year before, we did a whole big kind of S-turn through it, but this year we more of just rode across it. So you can see CR and Evan are still leading out pretty strong, and Steven and I have now caught up a little bit, but they still have a good advantage here as we go over this pretty loose bark chip section. And again, I lose some time here trying to slow down for that corner instead of going straight on into the river. The one nice thing about Nicholls Park, I will say, is it's typically a little bit smoother and a little bit more of a power course than a technical course. There are some technical moments, and we'll see one of those come up here where the course splits and Evan decides to go over the bridge, and CR, Steven, and myself, we all choose to ride through the river. I think the river was faster, and I believe Evan even started taking the river after that first time when he lost that little bit of a gap that he had. But the river was faster all the way this time, and that allows Steven to catch up to CR and now pass him on the left side. And I'm also right up on CR's wheel now as we kind of sneak up here towards the barriers, which kind of, you can't see them yet, but you come around the corner and then all of a sudden there are some barriers that you need to hop off for and jump over. We're not quite talented enough to jump over them on our bikes yet, but maybe in the future. So you can see Steven gets a pretty good run over it. CR actually catches him up, but then hits his bike. He doesn't quite lift his bike over far enough. Hits his bike, it throws him off a little bit, and now he's having a little bit of trouble clipping in. And so right as he gets in, I get past him, and Evan, who's right on my wheel, also makes a spot back up and gets past CR. It looks like CR still may be having a little bit of trouble clipping in, but he is getting there. So he's back in now. The only problem is Gavin's right on his tail. And so right as Gavin's pressuring him, I'm also pressuring Steven, trying to get around him. This part is also a little bit deceiving. It is more uphill than it looks, and it's slower than it feels. So as I try to sneak past Steven here, because I know there's another stream crossing coming up, and this stream crossing has more of a muddy bottom, so I wanted to be able to take a nice straight line through it and not wash out my front wheel. Really did not want to crash in the water. But this section here, so there's also two options. You could either ride a little bit of a longer route or take this shorter route. You can see Evan going up right there. He's chose to ride it and take the longer route. I chose to run it and take the shorter route. I don't know, really hard to know which line was faster. A lot of spectators that I talked to after said they watched, and it seemed like the riding line was faster unless somebody was running pretty quickly. So I don't know. I don't know which one was faster there, but I chose to run it every time. So we're going to jump over to CR's camera now. And this is the battle for fourth place right now. Gavin, who just sneaks by him, chooses the wide line that I was just talking about, and he chooses to go around and ride it. CR, on the other hand, decides he's going to go straight up right here and run it. So he hops off his bike, and you do lose. The hard thing with choosing to run is you lose time getting off and also getting back onto your bike, which you can't make up until you're back on the bike, essentially. But if the distance is significantly shorter or more difficult to ride, sometimes it is still faster to jump off. And it looks like that was the case for CR here, who was able to get in front of Gavin, who had just passed him, and now hold him off. So in this case, I think running was the right call for now. As the day went on, it got muddier and muddier, and it made clipping in really difficult. So it turned out to be faster to ride it near the end of the race, even though I did not. And then here, CR just takes a bad line. Just, I don't know what happened, but he just loses something there, and Gavin sneaks right past him. So now CR is going to have to do quite a bit of work to catch up here. And it's not ideal. It's really tough to catch up in cyclocross if too big of a gap opens, but CR has been really consistent riding a hard tempo. And these two people right here aren't in our field, but you can just see Gavin up ahead, who is in the field. And CR is trying to beat Gavin today because it is a double points day. So essentially the points you get for the race are doubled today. And if he can beat Gavin, that's going to move him up into third place overall, and in a pretty secure third place overall, I should add. If he loses to Gavin, it's going to be really, really close. I'll have to try to pull up those calculations here while we're watching through this. So CR gets a little bit of a slow start after getting back on the bike from the run-up. So those two guys that chose to road it, they got past him this time. So in this case, it looks like the riding was the faster option. And even Gavin, who he just passed on the run-up, sneaks right by him. So super frustrating there for sure to have done all that work catching up, and then Gavin sneaks past him. And I think the effort was just too much for CR. And Gavin's pretty much going to sneak away after this and just maintain his gap and get out of Dodge and clinch that fourth place overall. So now CR is going to finish fifth in this race. So not the finish he was hoping for. But fortunately, looking at the numbers right now, he is still going to finish 1 point ahead of Gavin in the overall. So there are 4 or 5 races left, and CR is currently in third overall, but by 1 point, so it's real close. For me, the race has been a little bit more uneventful. I got a pretty early gap, and like I said, it was a power course, so I was just able to maintain that speed. That suits my style, not too technical, and I was able to roll through for the win this week. Next week's course will be significantly more challenging.